think there's an important thing that we need to address in this whole emotional eating thing of when it comes down to like the actual diet that people are doing, like that restrictive diet is actually the reason why people emotionally eat.
So yeah, I mean, I think when we look at restrictive diets, there's a number of reasons why you could come up with the conclusion that the reason that you emotionally eat is likely tied to how restrictive you're being. But before we dive into that, I think we need to take a step back, because I think in our experience when we work with clients, right, a lot of times clients, like, they'll get on the phone and they'll be like, I'm an emotional eater, I'm a stress eater, it's so bad. And it's like, we need to stop looking at emotional eating as something that's either good or bad. We need to just...
It's just happening.
It's happening. And like, you know, we talked about in another video about bringing like more awareness to breaking the pattern of emotional eating. That's all this is. We need to kind of take a step back, take all of like, you know, the societal influence of emotional eating being a bad thing, and just kind of be neutral about it. And we always like to say, right, and at this point you want to go into like a scientist mode.
You just want to assess the situation really and like
collect data on it, right? And so when we're looking at emotional eating, I think this is where like having a journal or like, you know, grabbing your phone and putting notes on your phone, that's something that will be really helpful for you to start to collect that data. So what are some things that people should look for, like, or pay attention to when they're emotionally eating?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that we see, which is something in our experience, is like, are there certain days of the week where you tend to emotionally eat more? So like for me, it was always like Friday night, Saturday, and then Sunday I'd feel that guilt.
Why?
So because all week long, like Monday through Friday, even up until like Friday night, I was really good with my nutrition. And so I felt really good about it, and then my reward was being able to not track my food as diligently like Friday night and just kind of like let loose and enjoy myself. And so I knew that I was like, I always wanted to like have more indulgent foods like Friday night after a long work week, you know, be able to like go do fun things on Saturday. I associated that with also like having the fun foods that, you know, are bad, like that didn't fit into like my calories. That would kind of always pull me off track. And then Sunday I would also just like really feel guilty and be like, it's okay, I'll start again on Monday. And so it was this horrible cycle of like that emotional eating of rewarding myself on Friday every single week, and I couldn't stop it. And that was something that ended up like, I ended up collecting data about that and being like, something needs to stop here. Like I'm gonna need to either, you know, I need more calories on the weekend so that I can still adhere to my protocol.
Yep. And so I think that's like one pattern that we see all the time. And so like when you're saying, right, like assess the data, start to look if there's certain times of the week or certain times of the day when you tend to feel like you're out of control. For you, it was weekends. That was the same for me as well. But what I also found too was a big trigger was when I'd get home from work. Right? So I'd get home from work, and that's when like I felt like I just started like, you know, I was good all day and I didn't, you know, eat any of the treats at work. I, you know, packed my lunch. I didn't really eat breakfast, things like that. And then I got home from work and I was stressed from the day. I was super hungry because I hadn't eaten anything all day, and I was just like, oh my god, it's still like another hour until dinner's ready. And at that point it was just like the floodgates open, and I would eat everything, and then I'd feel so guilty and being like, oh my god, I just blew my whole day. Again, I was good all day long, and then I blew it. And so it's that same pattern of like, I was good, and then I blew it. Just different, like, you know, times of the day or week. I think another big trigger for people too is like, look at like lunchtime at work or like morning break at work. A lot of nurses that we work with are like, oh my god, my break room is always filled with goodies, like whether it's from patients or vendors or things like that.
Even like for
Client
like,
lunches.
I mean, for client lunches. And I remember like where I used to work, it was something where like my team would go out to lunch like almost every day, and that was really hard because I'm like, I would go and I'm like, I had my lunch packed, you know, back at the office. I'm like, I'll just go sit there. But like, I wanted it so bad, and there were some days where I would give into that because it looked so good, and like that was really hard to, you know, kind of balance that of like wanting to stick to my diet versus being able to like allow myself to eat that food and not feel guilty about it.
And sometimes it's not even just you. Sometimes it's the social pressure around certain times of the day, right? So like for me, I worked in a big open office environment with like hundreds of people, and I'd be like, oh, there's 15 of us going to grab like Chick-fil-A for lunch. Do you want to come? And it's like, no, I brought my lunch, I'll just stay here. But it's like, but I want to feel involved. And so they're like, come on, just like eat your lunch tomorrow, just come with us.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. And so that could be a trigger where you're like, okay, that just kind of start off with like, instead of just going and getting like a sandwich or something, it's like, all right, everyone else is having like a milkshake and fries and all that, and I'm just gonna like fit in and do that. Or like happy hour.
I was gonna say like we had a happy hour every Thursday night at one of my jobs, and it was something where like I had anxiety about it because I'm like, what is going to be my excuse this time of why I can't go?
Yeah.
And that was really hard to navigate because I was making a choice of either like having that social pressure and like feeling like I should because it's like my boss is there, like I should network and stuff, but I also know that I don't feel like I have that self-control to like only have, you know, a drink or two and
not eat any of the apps, right?
Exactly.
Right. So those are definitely like big triggers that you should pay attention to in your own life. And then especially for moms, we hear all the time, kids' meal times, right? If it's lunch or if it's dinner, your kid only ate like half of its peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or like it ate
like you cut the crust off and you're like these don't count. They're just count. My kid's crust.
Yeah.
Like,
or like Johnny left 2 of his chicken nuggets on the plate, and
by
then
the way,
go,
like always eat the chicken nuggets, never let them go to waste.
Just make sure you track them. But like you're like, oh my gosh, like that's kind of when whatever. Or like big thing for me. So we have a significantly younger sister, and when we were younger and like growing up, mom would be like, hey, can you go make this like for Michelle, our younger sister? The mac and cheese.
Oh my god.
That shit got me all the time. Like you'd make it, put a little bit in her plate, and then like just sit there and eat out of the pot.
Which one was it? Kraft?
Kraft. Like the little noodles.
The little noodles.
Or the shapes.
Not the like the shell. I mean the shells just they
Velveeta.
slap you differently. But the little
they're like little
elbows.
tubes.
The little elbow ones. The tubes.
Yeah, but then like so Kraft also had shapes. You know, the shapes would be like
a little crunchy.
Rugrats shapes. Yeah. Or like dino shapes or like letters.
Yeah.
The mac and cheese always got me. So I'm not a mom yet, but I also understand what it was like making that food for like Michelle because she was so much younger and being like, I'm just gonna sit here and finish off this pot of mac and cheese. So like
head over the pot, like spooning it into your mouth.
I know, like cheese on your like. It's gross. So that's a really big deal, is to start to look for those patterns in your day, in your week, of like, when am I super triggered? When do I tend to see like my eating be out of control?
So I think going back to like what I was talking about in the beginning of like your diet could be the reason why this is happening, like why you can't stop emotionally eating. And that's where we want to get into assessing what your actual diet is. Like, what does your nutrition look like? Are you eating 1,200 calories a day, like what a small child should eat? Like, is it too restrictive for you? Like, what does your actual diet look like? And is that actually the reason why like you keep emotionally eating?
I'm gonna say for the most part it is, and it's because of your fucked up relationship with food. Like, let's call a spade a spade. In most cases, we see most grown-ass women coming to us eating 800 to 1,200 calories a day because that's what they think they need to do to lose weight. And it's not their fault. That's what we're told. When you look at somebody like that, number one, you're super restrictive with your nutrition. You're not getting enough calories, so you're under eating, right? And then you're being way too rigid with yourself. You're holding yourself to these like standards of perfection that are just not reasonable. Like, you're only going to eat broccoli and steamed chicken for the rest of your life. Like, that's what you think you need to do in order to lose weight. Or like meal
replacement shakes.
Exactly. Well, again, we know I'm like kind of the nerdy one in all this. Pop the hat on, pop my coach's hat on. What happens when you undereat, right, or you're too restrictive for a long amount of time, is it throws off a lot of things in your body, right? It throws off your hormone levels. It throws off your neurotransmitter balance. And what happens with that is it can start to make you feel like you're more susceptible to being rash with your emotions. You're more susceptible to binge episodes because your hormone levels, like your hunger and your satiety hormone levels, are all thrown off. There's so many different things that are going on like internally and physiologically. So when you're in this like crazy emotional state and your hormones are all over the place and your neurotransmitters are all out of whack, when you kind of like get to that place where you're like, I don't know why I keep doing this. Like, it just happens. I feel so out of control. Yeah. Like, we talk about that all the time. Maybe you need to take a step back and look at, like, zoom out. Like, what are you doing on the day-to-day that's making you feel like you have to be so restrictive? That's making you undereat so much that, like, you're not able to incorporate some of these things that you actually enjoy.
Yeah.
And that feeds into like the whole idea of looking at foods as like good, and I'm good when I'm being on a diet, and bad, and I'm bad when I'm just living my life. So if you associate like broccoli as a safe or a good food, and I can eat that when I'm on my 1,200 calorie diet, but chips are a bad food and they make you gain weight, and I only eat those when I'm completely off the rails. Now you can see where we're starting to like develop that fucked up relationship with food.
Yeah, and I think it is kind of like, you know, like thinking about like a woman's journey through, you know, trying to lose weight, and like you're constantly trying to fit yourself into another diet box of like, oh, like keto's good because it doesn't have any carbs in it, and like that's what I need to lose weight. Or Optavia, where like you don't eat food, like your hair just falls out. Like,
800 calories a day of box bullshit, like trash meals that are high in soy. They're just terrible for your health.
Yeah. And so rather than trying to fit yourself and like with your personality, your commitments, like everything you have going on in your life, rather than trying to fit yourself into a like diet mold that's kind of like a cookie cutter.
Yeah, but that diet molds, like, Melissa, I don't care what you have going on in your life, what you enjoy, what you like, what you don't like. Just take everything in your life and push it aside and follow this plan, and if you can't, well then you fucking suck.
I mean, that sounds awful.
But that's what we do.
Right. And that's why like for all of our clients on our program, we use calorie cycling as our method of dieting, because it's something that like we have found that it's the most flexible dieting approach for like literally anyone to follow. So you're counting calories, you're able to, you know, have lower calorie days on days where like you don't need as much food, and then you have higher calorie days, like let's say on the weekends when you do want to have those more indulgent, you know, foods. And so whereas on a traditional restrictive diet, you're eating the same number of calories every single day, with calorie cycling, you're able to have that wiggle room and that flexibility, so you can, you know, go out to happy hour. Like if you know you have that every single week, if you know there's like a client lunch coming up, like that can be a high day for you. All the while you're still sticking to your protocol, you're still being adherent, you're still in a calorie deficit if your goal is to lose weight, and you're still making progress.
And I think, you know, by doing that, by, you know, allowing you to be more flexible, you're not holding yourself to like incredible like rigidity standards, allowing yourself to incorporate more of those like fun foods, right? The chips, the cookies, even the drinks, by, you know, making yourself not feel like it has to be so black and white all the time. A lot of times is you'll find yourself less stressed. You'll find yourself feeling less like frustrated. You'll feel more satisfied. You notice that your cravings start to, you know, go down, like your emotions are a lot more stable.
I think it kind of goes back to like, you tell your, like if you have kids, like you're telling your kids all the time, like you can't have the cookie, you can't have the cookie, you can't have it. That's all they want now is the cookie, right? It's the same thing if you're on a super restrictive diet where you're saying you can't have the chips, you can't have the chips. All of a sudden, you're going to want it. And so when you are emotional and you are associating those chips with that's comfort, that's instant gratification, of course you're going to binge on it because you've been restricting it for so long. That's why, like, in all of this, you know, it really does come down to assess the situation. Is the diet that you're on the best for you? And if it's not, then you need to find something new. Good. Are we done with YouTube? No, we have one more.
Oh, one more.
One more check.